The outbound is quite important, I guess so.
Yeah. Outbound as well, yeah, absolutely.
And, hi, hello everyone. I'm happy to welcome here to our today's Lunch and Learn session. Today we will talking about flows, and you've already maybe heard our discussions here going on about this very, very big, huge topic, flows. But before we jump into the topic, I would like to say once again, hello, welcome everybody. I can see already people coming into our chat. Hi, Tim. Nice to have you here. How are you doing? And also Birgit, I hope you're fully equipped for the next, let's say, 35 to 45 minutes. As it's a lunch and learn, you may take something to have a good, proper basis for our heavy topic, which is flows. So maybe take some brain food. Today's session, we thought about when we started about this, thinking about this session, we thought about how we're going to do this today. And we thought maybe let's put ourselves into the position of a fiction company with different roles. That's why I have my two experts here with a role of an admin and also of an architect. We will introduce them later on as well. But before we start, I know some of you are here for the first time, so let me give you some background on Lunch and Learn in general. So what we are doing here once a month is we discuss topics that come upon our projects quite regular, that we stumble upon on a regular basis. So that's why we thought, okay, let's give something back to the community, because the community is so strong in the Salesforce ecosystem. Let's try to put our part in there as well and open up all the things we discover in our project also to this community. However, we don't want to do this like in a one way. We really would like to encourage you to interact with us, to ask your question during our session. Don't mind to interrupt us, and also to put your comments here. You can see here, maybe we are fully equipped with our laptops, so I can see what is going on in the chat. I can see your question. I can also take them into our session. So hopefully now you're all set, and we will start our session. First of all, let me greet our two experts today. Hello, you two guys. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you.
Hello. Fine.
Great. That's good. So today we have Vasiliy with us. Vasiliy, can you maybe say something about your role here at Factory 42?
Okay. My name is Vasiliy. I've been a customer success consultant at Factory 42 for just over 2 years. And in my daily life, if I don't build something new for our clients, often I'm troubleshooting something someone else built for our clients. And depending on the case, either figuring out why something's not working the way it should or adding additional functionality.
That sounds pretty interesting. And also today you will have kind of a similar role. So when we brainstormed, we thought, okay, Vasiliy, that would be a perfect admin for our fictional company. So that would be your role for today. And Markus, you will support, you will help Vasiliy today with his daily task as an CRM admin. But besides that, what's your role here at Factory 42?
Yes, I'm technical architect at Factory 42 since 4 years now. I'm in the Salesforce universe for more than 10 years now.
Yeah.
And yes, Flow is a major point on my architect business to, being a helpful partner, when to use Flow, when not, and how to use it. And when it comes to big flows and a lot of flows, Flow, from A to Z.
So you're flowing through the Salesforce ecosystem.
Flowing to the flows, yes. Yeah, it's
pretty nice.
Second language, Flow. Yeah. Besides German and English.
That sounds good. So maybe before we start jumping into our sessions, as I said in the beginning, we thought we have a fiction company set up for today. Maybe it's called Factory 24. So we are a manufacturing company. We are based with our fiction company in the US and Canadian market. And we were thinking about how to proceed and how to better support our sales reps. And that's why Vasiliy, who is stumbling from time to time, not maybe on a daily basis, but from time to time, thinking about having a new flow that supports his sales key user even better than before. Before we do that, Markus, what are the most important things to discover, to think about when you try to automate business processes, when you try to implement flow?
Yeah, it's important to behave like a developer no
Yeah.
code, like a developer, and the developer has a plan, let's say. Of course, it should have. And the plan should be not only in the mind, it should be written down. Have a plan to build a flow. Don't start in the flow builder.
Yeah.
Have a plan that can be piece of paper, can be a drawing tool like Lucidchart, like Draw.io, like PowerPoint, whatever, take it, but have a plan how you build it and make, of course, familiar with the existing plan when when a process exists, is written down a chart.
Yeah.
That should be very important. Yeah.
Totally agree, because a plan always helps you to also discover maybe things you haven't thought about at the beginning, right? So there might be this corners you only think about the happy path, but what happens if something is failing during the process, doing automation? So that's why it's important to think about this upfront before you doing the implementation. Then maybe run into things you don't want to run into, right?
And even when writing down, some question arise which should be asked to the business, rethink before implement, and at the end ask some additional question. Do it at the beginning of, and painting the chart, painting your plan is helpful, even finding out business open points from business side, let's say, or suggestions.
Yeah. And then if you have your plan, what's the next steps for getting the flow into the system? Implementing, of course, according to our plan, and
test. Don't do test at the end. Test at the beginning and make it in small pieces. Of course, big challenge. Sometimes a flow is a big challenge. Small pieces are easier. Develop a little bit of the flow and test it. Add more logic, test it. Develop, test, develop, test. Even simple things might get wrong.
Yeah, totally agree.
And it's always have a big flow, 20 elements, and then you look, 17, 18 is wrong. No, step first is wrong, but you never tested first because it was so simple. Some unhandled thing, it might be empty, no record, and so on.
So it's really back and forth.
Back and forth.
From implementing to testing, then adding another element to our flow to, also think about also to get the acceptance criteria into the flow that may come from the business itself.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That sounds good then.
The coders will know that. They call it test-driven development. But from consulting, it's a good advice to make it in small pieces, go back and forth.
Yeah, exactly. Also I think probably in the audience, we have quite many people actually, that don't do flows on a regular basis, which is perfectly fine. And it's a good tool to do this. But there are some things you may want to consider, like Markus said, test during your development, and also test after you've deployed your flow to your production system, to your sandbox. So however your development environment looks like, right? Okay. And for our session today, we had Vasiliy with our sales rep key user talking. And Vasiliy, there was a new requirement coming up, I heard. So something about that it should be happening.
Well, when we came up with the user case, we had to make sure we came up with something to cover as many bases as possible when using flows in order to show it to our audience. So the case we came up with is, as Anna already introduced, it's a US-based manufacturer that manufactures electric-based equipment, generators, stuff like this, and it also sells warranties. So it has kind of two lines of business. Well, let's say that in the marketplace recently, we heard we heard problems about supply chain logistics. Now, where clients buy expensive equipment, 100,000, and it doesn't arrive for years. So now our clients want it stipulated in every contract that when I purchase a power generator, and it should arrive on this day or prior to this day. And at the same time, we also have warranties, and warranties don't need to arrive at any particular time. So in our business case, we wanted to automate the creation of the contracts, and then the information from opportunity product would be used to create deliveries within the contracts that's stipulated. It is important to point out that we're a US-based manufacturer. We don't want to sell anything to Mexico, too complicated. We don't want to sell anything to Europe, too complicated. But we have this nice neighbor toward the north called Canada. We like doing business with them. The problem is Canada is a bilingual country with different laws. We cannot really create contracts automatically in the system. So what we want to do is, in case it's a Canadian client, we want to send a chatter message to our Canadian legal team somewhere in Canada to put the contract in together. So the rules are that when the opportunity is set to closed won, and it is a US-based client, then we want to automate the contracting. If it's a Canadian, then we want just to send a message to the appropriate department. And if it's anything else, we want to roll back the transaction. We don't want any closed won opportunities if it's not something we cannot deliver.
Yeah. So actually, there are quite a lot ifs, and in that case, but under that condition. So I think it would be nice to have this all summarized in a user story, and I think you have something prepared.
We do. As I explained the general concept of what we used, you actually have to formulate it.
Sorry, Vasiliy, I think you still need to share your user story so also the audience can see it. No, yep.
That's it, right? Oh no, that's
there, and then you click sharing. All right.
That's there.
Perfect.
So you might get a business requirement from a business side in this form, in this narrative, as I just explained. But you actually have to stipulate it, what needs to be done for your technical side, what constitutes a completed project, what's the acceptance criteria. So in our case, we have 5 points that we came up with. And acceptance criteria 1 is that if an opportunity is changed to closed won, and the opportunity has to have at least one opportunity product because you sold something, and it's a US client, then please generate the contract with the possible delivery dates automatically, provided that no other contract exists. So last thing we want is people accidentally opening and closing opportunities and new contracts being generated. That would complicate the process. So that's acceptance criteria number 1. Point number 2 is relevant information from opportunity, like account address, name, close dates, delivery, any kind of instructions need to be stipulated in the contract. For each opportunity product, opportunity line item that has a specified delivery date, which we call service date here, there needs to be a corresponding record of delivery created in the system that will act like a child object to the contract.
Just to track each and particular each delivery of every product that is in the opportunity.
Correct.
It might be different, right?
It might be different. You would have different dates.
Yeah.
Not every opportunity line item needs to be delivered. Like I said, there are warranties.
That's true.
No issue. And then, of course, different products might have different warning labels. Something is toxic, something is combustible, something can only be delivered to the side door, not the back door, little things like that. So conceptually, what we want to say was, what we want to show you was how to take an object with a child objects and then create a corresponding object with corresponding child objects. And it's a use case that you would probably come across your business requirements from time to time. So the concepts we show you today, we hope you can implement it in other ways in your own orgs.
Totally agree.
There is also a 4th criteria, which is, yes, to satisfy this requirement, we created a new field on opportunity object to say that when somebody clicks on the opportunity, they want to see if the contract exists or not via lookup field.
Yeah.
And I guess we have this last point, which we actually thought about not in the correct order, but once we actually start walking through the process, you begin to realize there are other hidden requirements for situations you didn't think through enough that might actually pop up once you get into testing.
I totally agree. And if I could jump in there, I mean, Markus, that's probably also something you are quite familiar with from our project lives, because to have like this very clear structured way of the user story is usually not the way how we get our requirements, right?
Yeah.
So from an as an admin like Vasiliy, what would you suggest Vasiliy to do to get like the full picture?
I would say, of course, think of the unhappy pairs. Look what can happen, right? Be negative to find out early what can happen. And there are some buzzwords you should think, be very careful, always, never.
Yeah.
And you always just like, really, really, always, really, never. And here for the country, US, how can it be named? What is when it's an empty, when it's named America in German, and so on. All the stuff should be checked, be careful on what's missing. And this is an example, say AC5 to what happens when it's in Canada and what happens when it's not in America and not in Canada, and so on. These are typical things. What charting the process when the line is going into the nirvana, then it's something to ask and how to technically handle it.
Totally agree, and we've saw this when we draw the process. So I think Vasiliy, you also have the chart prepared.
Yeah.
So maybe if you could switch over there, and then we can have a close look on what Markus is actually talking about, because there we will see.
Well, we just saw the written out requirements, but
Yeah.
we also need a visual schema to understand where things can go wrong. Having it written out is one thing, but visually having a bird's eye view really solves a lot of problems in advance that could potentially pop up. So if we go, this is the basic process chart and how our flow should work. It would begin with a opportunity being set to closed one.
And we can, and we can see that it's not done by the process, but done by the sales rep.
Right.
Right. So that's our entry criteria.
This is the entry criteria. What does your human user do?
Yeah.
What needs to be done in order for this process to take place? So first thing is, yes, we do want it to be a closed one opportunity. We don't want this to fire on every possible
occasion.
Well, contracting stage, for example. Efficiency is key. You don't want to burn up your resources by firing flows unnecessarily. So this is where the entry criteria is important. In our situation, well, we have an opportunity that's set to closed one. But what are the other important things that we don't want to? Well, if an existing contract is there, we don't want a new contract. We don't want a situation, as I mentioned earlier, a user might go in into, or manager might go into an opportunity, accidentally click something, reopen opportunity, panic, quickly close it again as if it never happened. But you have all the processes firing in the background. So if a contract doesn't exist, fire. If it does exist, forget it. The other important aspect, and this is something that came up with us once we started troubleshooting the flow. What happens if there's no opportunity line item? Somebody forgot to add them. Do you want a contract generated? In our case, no, we don't. We only want contracts generated with the opportunity line item present.
Yeah.
So this would be the entry-level criteria over here, which I'll show you on our actual flow, where it's located. And what is our next step? Well, what is the next decision? Well, as I mentioned before, our company doesn't want to deal with non-US customers. So a decision element is there to to filter out all the possible accounts, non-US based accounts.
Question.
Yeah.
Sorry. So here, check country of account. Which country? It's an example for precise which country we all know. There's exactly one country. No, it has. We have two countries: billing country, shipping country on the account. That's points where you get, not every detail is clear. Ask for it.
Yeah, totally agree. And that's why we draw it first, because if we have then a review that these things might come up, and we can, already start figuring out before we implement the flow and then realize, okay, we've checked the wrong country. Our countries are always stored in a different country field. Yeah.
And somewhere audience might have a question. Well, Vasiliy, if you don't want to deal with you don't want to deal with the U.S. countries, why is this in the decision element over here, and why didn't you just put it into the entry level criteria? And the problem is in our case, because we didn't create any additional fields on the opportunity object, the country exists on the account, and when you're putting in your entry level criteria, you cannot check values via lookup fields. So that is something left for decision elements. So if I don't want an opportunity that's linked to some account that has this value.
Yeah.
So this is why we do this more down the line here.
Yeah. Okay.
And once our condition is satisfied, it is a US based client, then what do? Well, we want to create the contract. So we already know this is somebody we want to do business with. Next, because the information for our deliveries is stored in the opportunity line item, this is where we're going to have to pull all the related opportunity line items in order to work them through, pull the information that we need, and then create an appropriate set of other, let's call them cousin records.
Exactly. Yeah, that is right. So this whole overview gives us already an idea how we're gonna implement the flow. It's not like 100% one-to-one visual representation of our flow, but it already gives us good idea which elements are we going to use in the flow. For instance, if we have like that opportunity products, there is plural. This already means, okay, there are more than one record. There's probably more than one record. So we need probably also a flow to then process all the opportunity products. So now I'm really curious, can we maybe have a look at the flow that was implemented based on this chart?
And this is what our actual flow looks like. Let me just outline them. We have the entry criteria, then we have the three-way fork that leads us into three different outcomes. Again, one is US based, one is Canadian based, and a default with an error message, where a successful interview run in this direction. And I guess this is where I should quickly take some time and quickly kind of brush over exactly how we put this flow together. So I'm going to start with the very first thing is actually your entry level criteria. Probably the most important step you're gonna come across in the first phase of your development. When do I want my flow to fire? And in this case, you specify that it is a opportunity object.
Exactly. Yeah.
Object is the first. Then we want to know what is done to the object. Is it just updated? Is it created? Is it deleted? In our case, I decided to go with create and update just in case.
Yeah, and that is perfectly fine, because in the beginning, when we were talking about the acceptance criteria, we said, okay, we want to trigger this process only when the opportunity is set to closed won. So this means there has been an opportunity in advance that have been some sales we're working on. So that said, it doesn't make sense to trigger this flow right away when an opportunity created, because probably, hopefully, it will never be created right away in the closed won stage. So
I mean, there are some outliers where let's say a client was requesting the exact same order. You might as well go clone it and go. But those are outliers. How often do they happen? We don't know. But the one thing I wanted to make sure that our audience understands, we got to take a step back a bit, is we're actually dealing with record triggered triggered flows, meaning that these flows are triggered the moment a record of a specific object, like an opportunity, is modified. That's when the entry criteria is evaluated. We probably don't have the time to discuss all the other variations of flows, but from my experience and based with the introduction of the new flow trigger explorer, I would say that most likely 80% of world flows would be record triggered flows going forward. As auto launch flows, the need for them is slowly shrinking.
Yeah. I can only agree to that. And also, I mean, from a business point of view, what does it mean? Or from a business user point of view, what does it mean to have a record triggered flow? It actually means the flow is started automatically without the user to decide, should I go into this process or not? Because the system does this. The system does this with the help of entry criteria, as we have seen. And the user doesn't, remind his or himself to press a button or something, but the system is taking care.
Correct.
There was no criteria, no requirement for having a button and a screen. Maybe I see a lot of implementations. Closing is a screen. Did you think about this and that? Of course, screen flow will be an option, but here we had not the requirement for, and don't.
Yeah, but when we think about having new requirements, that would be actually our first decision. Which type of flow are we going to use? How do we have like this fully integrated automation and no requirement to have a specific button? Then we go for record triggered in most cases. No. In most cases, there are always exceptions to the rule, never, of course.
No bad.
But what I think, is really interesting about the entry criteria is we have some criteria that are checked right away, but I think you mentioned there are also other possibilities to decide whether the flow is running or not. And from my point of understanding, that would be also quite important, because you don't want to, waste the performance of your Salesforce platform with having record triggered flows triggered all the time, even if not necessary. Markus, I think you have also some opinions on where to put the decision elements, when and where to decide if a record triggered flow is running or not.
So yeah, one idea is that you make a criteria as a decision element. So the pro is it's better visible, a decision with the options. You see it a little bit better than the criteria you put in the trigger flow. Performance is an point, right? So what you should not do in your flow, doing a lot of things like query here and then decide, oh, I have nothing to do. This is not good. So if you make a entry criteria in a decision, do it in the first step, then the performance difference is small. So do it, it's more readable, have no entry criteria, and then the decision, that's more readable, that's fine. There's no big performance issue, but make the decision in the early step, the flow to quickly stop the flow doing things, right?
So if we have a look at our particular flow here in our screen, having this decision element as first element within the flow is fine from your perspective, because there at the very beginning of the flow, we decide, should we run it or not? Doesn't really matter if we do it in the end criteria or decision element.
The record is there from Salesforce has it. It should not query it. It's there. It checks here or there. It's milliseconds different. That's not the point.
Yeah.
As long as you do no queries, no loops, and then decide, oh, nothing to do. That's not good.
So first best practice, check mark. Very nice. So let's go on in our flow. Vasiliy, what would be the next
Actually,
element?
I just want to add something else to what Markus has said, is that if you looked at our entry level criteria, we can only use fields that exist on the opportunity object. Something I already mentioned previously, but in decision element, so here, stage name, opportunity field, total opportunity quantity, also an opportunity field. Contact ID, opportunity. I cannot scan anything based on related fields of an account. However, when I come to my very first decision, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for record, that's an opportunity. Then it's taking the account lookup field, and it's checking what is the billing country on the account lookup field. So we're going to the next object to decide whether this flow should start or not. The one last thing I wanted to just mention on the entry level criteria, it's also important, especially in our case here, these two radio buttons.
Mm.
You see, in the first option, the flow will run anytime an opportunity that is closed that is closed one, doesn't have a contract and has an opportunity line item. It'll keep on running if it's updated. So let's say if you have like an external automated system, transfers your account into another system and updates some field on it, says synced or something.
Yeah.
What happens is this flow is going to fire. If,
Yeah, or
if
even
these three are whereas in the second option, it will only fire when one of these conditions previously did not fit the criteria. For example, being at a different stage, and then it changed to closed one. So this is something to pay attention to. Often we get these well, I don't call them complaints, requests to investigate why something has ran 26 times at night when this record shouldn't be even touched.
Exactly.
It's often because of that. The other thing is a quick mention about fast fill updates. This option only works if you are updating something on the opportunity. In our case, we're creating other objects.
Yeah.
And we're sending notifications out. So you would always, unfortunately, would have to go with the actions to related records. This path takes more juice to run in your system, but which is why fast fields was created to begin with, in order to save some resources.
Yeah.
But this is also something to pay attention to, that if you're only gonna update another field on the opportunity based on this criteria, then this is something that you should definitely consider.
Exactly. So my recommendation would always be to go with fast field updates first. And if you then, or maybe already during your design, discover, okay, I'm not going to update only the record from which my automation starts, but also different records, then and only in that case go to the other option, because it has performance impacts on your platform. So you would like to keep it or use it only in the cases where it's really required to do so, right? So we had our entry criteria, we had the decision element, and now we're going to have a look at what else is happening in our flow.
Okay.
So
let's pretend that this is a client we want to deal with, a US-based client. What happens next? Well, once we confirm that we in fact want to have a contract with this entity, the contract is created. So just from the conceptual point of view, you got to understand it's going to be one contract per opportunity.
Right.
So that's what we do. Use the create records element. Now, from personal experience, you're probably going to use this 15% of the time.
Yeah.
To be honest, most flows, 80% of the flows, it's usually update records, get records. The other 15% is create records, and then a rare 5%, 1 in 20 flows, you actually delete something.
Yeah.
If you choose to.
Yeah. Just one interruption. Maybe we have a question from the audience. Maybe, Markus, that would be something for you. So the question is, if somebody, or if we need to prove conditions from other objects, how can we get the records from the related objects into our flow? So I think proof conditions, maybe Julia, you can give us some backgrounds, proof conditions during our flow to decide which path to go during our flow, or how is it meant? Maybe we take it that way.
One example here was we are on opportunity and we have a condition on account here, the billing country. So we do it here in the decision. We can go upwards from the opportunity. We can go upwards, check on the account.
Yeah.
From the contact to account, even for several, let's say, steps or levels. What we not can go is down. I'm on the account and have to check, is there an opportunity?
Yeah.
This is then a case for I have to do a query, right?
Yeah.
And decide if I need, is there one opportunity, exists one, or do I need every opportunity? but then I need an active query.
Like we are doing this with the get opportunity line items element here in our flow, right?
Well, I think if I'm not mistaken, the question was, how do you use the filtering?
How do you prove conditions from other objects?
Yeah. Okay. So in this case, what you want to do is check on conditions from other objects. Decision element is your best way to go. Why? Because you're going to go into the decision element, right? Let's add a condition. Let's say you want to check on something 2 objects over. So here we would go into a record opportunity. So this represents the record that was just being processed. You click on it, and then you see the very first fields are all the lookup fields. You can skip over to the next object. So I can go to either account, I can go to contract, I can go created by. So in our case, you are looking for something on the account, for example, or on accounts that were created by somebody. So you can continue to go over and over, like
you can go to the parent, right? So if it's a opportunity with a account hierarchy mechanism, for example, you can go several steps, not unlimited, but
By the way,
steps.
if you want to stay at account, you just scroll down and start choosing the account fields, what we did. But in your case, it could be depending on your data model, depending on the object you're querying, you can continue going until you hit the object by which you want to actually filter out the process in the flow.
Yep. Understood.
I hope that kind of satisfies the...
Yes, it says, thank you, Julia, for the feedback. It says that was her question. Great. And sorry for interrupting. So we were discussing the elements that are still available, or we also included in our flow, like the new contract.
In this case, I just want to do a quick note on creating new records. Very similarly, like on most elements, you would have to specify the object at start.
Yeah.
And of course, how many do we want? Well, we want 1 contract per 1 opportunity. So these are the radio buttons for that. And in this case, we want use separate resources at literal values. So we want to take the exact fields that we deem are important for an opportunity and plaster it onto the contract that's about to create it. So what do we want? We want the contract to identify the account that's been created for. We want the billing city, billing country. Obviously, that's actually comes off of an account. Lastly, you probably might want your contract to have a reference to the opportunity that it belongs to. So in this case, we used record name.
There would be the opportunity name. Right?
That would be the opportunity. We just chose it. In your real life, you probably use some other descriptors, and a particular stock number, opportunity number, who knows. And of course, we want the contract start date, which at this point, I made it the close date of the opportunity record. And again, once again, please note that I've pulled most of the fields that come from the account.
Yeah.
So I went from record, account, get this from account ID. Just like in the decision element we
and as this was our business requirement, because we had one AC saying, okay, please take over the data from account, from opportunity, also to our contract, just not to lose track to which account this contract does belong.
Correct. And the next step, once we figured out the contract part, well, now we need to build all the delivery records based on the products that we sold. So, and this would be the get records.
Before we jump into that, sorry for interrupting, because we had another question coming up. So Lorenz is asking if it's also possible to reference not only a specific user, but also queues standing for a group of people as an owner. So is this possible within a flow?
Look for the group of, if the owner is a queue, or?
The question is if it's possible to reference queues instead of owner within flows. And I think there are some use cases where it is possible. So think about objects where queues can be owners. Like imagine a flow that assigns a task to a queue. That is something you can also definitely do within your flow. But also if you want to check maybe if somebody is an owner or if a queue has a certain thing, certain record assigned, you can also do this.
Right, it's possible. So you should know that queues are groups.
Yeah,
And groups is a lot of, and queue is just a part of it. So it's a group of type queue, something like that. You have to check if it's a user or a group. So you will work typically with the prefix. A user is 005. If not, it can be a queue only. And I'm not sure in which scenario you need an extra query and when you can do it directly checking. But yes, queues can be checked by group. And
but yeah, the problem is that we actually have to have them set up in the system. We don't have anything set up in our system, any queues in order to illustrate this point. It would have been a good question actually to have in advance to prepare for.
And it's a good example. We come later to that, but now it's a very good example. So I want to check if it's a user or a group or a queue and so on. This stuff is typically not only required in one flow. It's typically something you should provide in a subflow, in a helper, in a tool. There's an ID in, please say it's a group or not, and what's the name. So that logic can be built once in a subflow, and you just benefit something.
And I can see here some comments coming up regarding this queue question. And Puneet, yes, it's possible to also implement assignment rules through record triggered flows. Of course, you don't have to use the standard feature that is available in Salesforce. You can leave these feature deactivated and simply use a record triggered flow to update the owner of a record to based on criteria. Let's say we come back to our regional example where we say, okay, a contract from the US will be assigned to the back office team from the US, but a contract from account from Canada that goes to a different team because we need bilingual and we need French and English for getting this contract written and then sent to the customer. So that is definitely possible. Having a close look at the time, maybe we could have a look at how, if we continue with our flows, how we're going to test our implementation. How does this work, Vasiliy?
So actually execute an interview and see what it does. Okay.
Yeah.
So in our case, I'll just quickly skim over the fact that we're creating a new object, then we're pulling in our opportunity line items.
Yeah.
Then we iterate them. This is the area that I wish we would have spent more time on, because this is probably the hardest concept for a typical day-to-day admin to understand. And last but not least, once we figured out how we want to set up our deliveries, we create the deliveries in one batch, and then we update the opportunity with the contract. But I just want to show you how our flows are supposed to work. So here I have an example. I have my opportunity line items, a Burlington textile weaving plant generator. Sounds like a client we want to deal with. So we're going to go with a closed one, save. As you see, this populated contract appeared, indicating that our flow actually did exactly what it was supposed to do.
Yeah. So
just to give you an example, that's the contract, and these are all the delivery sub records that were created. Now, often you might actually want to see visually what did the flow do with this particular record. This is where the debugging. I guess we changed something here, didn't we? While clicking around.
Not really. Save. No.
Okay, I'll do a save as anyway.
And then
let's activate it. And then we debug, skip starting conditions. I'm going to point to the exact same opportunity we just saw. Here we go.
And then it runs through. And I think,
whoa,
whoa,
we can't create a contract. That's probably because yeah, of course. When we're dealing with the owner ID question, I forgot to delete my owner ID field.
We're having like a full circle moment, because in the beginning, Markus
Test
said
before, not at the end. Yes.
test
Well,
after
Yeah.
every change. That's really
well,
nice,
in this
real
case,
life
we
practice.
were responding to the audience question.
Use debug
Yeah.
often. Use it in the beginning. Do additional variables to get
Of
you more
course, yeah.
insight what's happening around.
Yeah.
And in this case, we see that the flow quickly identified that it is a US client, created our new contract, which I just showed you, took the opportunity line items, iterated them.
Yep.
That is,
Please explain the main logic on flows,
yeah,
with why loop and why the create.
yeah, I feel like this is something we definitely have to explain to our audience. And you have to understand that in this situation, opportunity line items, if you look at our Burlington example, we have 4 records,
Mhm.
which means
And
this
3 are relevant. in
the
that
3
case.
which are 3 are relevant. This element pulled the 3 relevant ones. Again, why the 3 relevant ones? Our criteria is that if it has a service date, we want to create a delivery for it record. If it doesn't, it's a warranty, SLA bronze. We don't want this.
Mhm.
We don't want this delivery record to be created.
Yeah.
So in this case, you have to understand that this element is going to pull in 3 records. Now you
So I
have,
can imagine this like a list of
Yeah.
results I have during my flow.
yes. So the best way I can describe this, and you can correct me if I'm going off topic, is imagine if there's a busy in the bureaucratic office, there's a busy table, and somebody dumps 3 formulars, I don't know, 3 resumes on your table,
Mhm.
and you have to do something with them. You have 3, so you start going through the 3 resumes. So that's what we're doing here. We're going to pull from this collection variable, which is generated by this get records. We have to do something here with these records. So we start going through them one by one. And what we did here conceptually is, you got to think, for every opportunity line item that exists, there has to be a corresponding delivery record. So in order for us to do this in advance, edit flow, we have to create a record variable for delivery to hold our information temporarily. So maybe resumes wasn't the best example, but think about this. You have 3 formulars, templates that are on your desk. You have to fill them out because of 3 different applicants. And then you would have to do something with these 3 templates, filled out forms, and pass it on to the next department. So what we do here is we first create the variable for the delivery. It's like a blank for
It's an empty
formula.
record, and now we fill
Right.
it.
And now we fill out all the information.
Yep.
What's the contract name of the record? There it is. What's the delivery date? That's important because we want delivery date showing up on the delivery record. Things like what the product is. So everything on the left, this is the fields you want to fill out on your template. Everything on the right are the values you're getting from an existing opportunity line item that you want to transfer to this kind of like an empty formula. I'm sorry, the word for formula, the English word for formula escapes me. It's like a form. It's a form. So what we've done here was we took a blank form, we filled out all the information, but now you got to do something with the form. If on a busy desk, what you would do, you'd put it on a separate file. You fill out the first, you put on the second file, then you fill out the second, you put in the file, you fill out the third, you put in the file. This is what the second assignment variable element does. Is in advance, I created the file in the form of a record collection variable. Oh, and then we're going
And then you go through it like one by one, right?
And then it's like adding it into the file. Because if you don't do this, then each form that you filled out, it's like throwing it out the window. It has to be stored somewhere so that you can take it and bring it to the next department. I hope I did not confuse most of our audience, but assign values, add it to a collection.
Exactly.
And at the end,
and then
just
at the
one, right?
end,
Yeah.
you're just going to take that file to the collection, give it on to the next department, says, okay, you're it.
Yeah, I really like the picture of having this physical pile of CVs or resumes and then doing something. That makes it really easy to understand.
And keep in mind, in the loop, we have 2 assignments: filling the form, and second, add it to the thing. Can it combined in one assignment? Technically, yes, you can fill out and do it in one step.
Yeah.
But it's not readable. And imagine
Yeah.
when you add a 7th, 8th element, then the adding, it's like putting the form incomplete on the stack, something like that. So have 2 assignments. One task is filling the form, the record in our case. The second is put on the stack. And the last thing is bring the stack to the outbound thing, store it, right? Do it in the folder.
Absolutely. So usually what Markus means is don't add the add to the file element over here at the top, because anything that follows it is not going to be added to the element. It's important to separate your functions for your own visibility and understanding what's going on. Fill out the records, add them to the collection, and then boom, right here, create the records.
For test. Look, yes.
Yeah, that was the keyword.
Storing is,
So we were talking about also testing, and we've seen what is happening in the debug flow. So maybe we could jump back into that topic and having another look at how is debugging going on and how do we test our implementation.
Okay, well, in this example, we showed you of a perfect situation where everything works as supposed to. But often you would get these confusing error messages, not knowing where they originated from. Usually, if you're an admin, your user is going to complain, this is not working. I got this error message. So, for example, here, I have an example, Dickerson mobile generators, again, fits the criteria, no contract, has the opportunity line items. And when I try to close it to closed one, bam, comes the red screen of death. And of course, everyone's confused. If they're lucky enough, they might capture it in a screenshot, but often say, well, I tried to do this on this record, it didn't work. Well, as an admin, as a daily admin who doesn't build flows all regularly, it is important for Salesforce admins to be comfortable with the failed flow logs that you find in the setup. So what you would do is you go into the home, failed says paused and failed flow interviews. You click on it. It's going to first show you all the paused elements. You click on the failed, and this is where you get to the evidence.
So this is like the missing screenshot here. User didn't
what happened?
Yeah,
this is the forensics. Let's say.
Yeah, okay.
It's like you're a forensic detective at a murder scene, and you want to know exactly what happened. The very last interview, it says it was launched by me. It would have the date. If you actually click it open, it would show what our flow attempted to do and where it failed.
It's a full replay of what happens in the past.
Video
evidence murder
of the murder
happens, yes.
So in this case, we see the opportunity went off pretty well. And I also encourage our admins over there to get comfortable with this right-hand column, because it lists step by steps what your flow did. You see, it starts off with how it started. It says that I was the one who started it. And it's going to give me the opportunity ID. This Dickerson, you see, QAQ. This is the Dickerson generators. Now we know which flow failed. We know who is the murderer.
Who is the murderer of that flow?
Who is the culprit, right? And then we see what's going on. We know that we come to the first decision element. It's going to tell us, hey, look at that, executed outcome, United States. Why? Because the account fits the criteria. It's in the US. Then we go further. We see that here a new contract is in fact created. Right? Result:
Yeah.
a record is ready to be created. So you know this.
So quite a lot of detail and quite easy to investigate and to find out what really happened to that flow. Also from my
Absolutely.
testing.
You keep on following the blue path. For example, here is this no. We know that the loop processed 1, 2, 3, 4 records.
Yeah.
And then we know the error, the crime scene, is the create of the deliveries records. And the beauty of this is that we get the error message and tells us exactly why it failed. In this case, and again, I'll say about 50% of flow failures probably happen because there's a validation rule somewhere on another object that's preventing from a record being created or updated, and that rolls back the entire transaction.
Yeah,
giving you the red screen.
I was about to ask how many flow failures are due to validation rules, and I think it's quite
I
a
think
lot.
it's 50%. It's either the majority of them is it's either validation rule, or you're trying to populate a field that is a pick list with a value that's not in the pick list.
So quite many things to stumble upon during the flow creation, and we've seen many details today. However, if you want to go further and if you want to go a little bit more to the details of flow, you will also currently now see our flow training is one possibility to dive a little bit deeper into flows. And just for the ones who are very quick on decisions, we have some vouchers, some 15% off, I think, until tomorrow. So if you want to go a little bit more into details, if you want to get lost like we've did here in our flows, then this is your chance to jump into our topic. So I hope we had a nice overview today for the flows, and I would like to encourage you, invite you for our next session that will be on December 14th. And during this session, we will talk about what are the most important browser extensions, what are the little apps that makes our admin's life much more easier just to work with, doing work with the platform. So with this being said, I hope to see everybody back on December 14th. And I will say thank you to Vasiliy, thank you to Markus for being here, for giving us so many insights on flows, and then hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.